Good morning, all. I'm Dwight Keenan, Chair of the Kansas Corporation Commission. I'm joined by fellow commissioners Susan Duffy and Commissioner Andrew French. At this time, I will call to order this meeting of the Kansas Corporation Commission on this 10th day of March, 2022. First matters up for our consideration are 8 consent agenda items. Commissioners, you've had an opportunity to review the orders in each one of these items. So at this time, I would ask if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, and I'll begin with Commissioner Duffy.
Good morning, Chair French. I have no questions or comments.
Thank you. Commissioner French.
No questions. I move approval of the consent agenda.
I second the motion.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. Pardon me. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. The consent agenda is approved. Next, we move on to the first of several noticed items. The first one up is, excuse me, docket number 22-EKCE-020-TAR. This is in the matter of Evergy Kansas Central, Inc. and Evergy Kansas South, Inc. seeking approval from the Commission of the Evergy Energy Efficiency Rider 2021 filing. Before us this morning is an order on the joint motion to approve the stipulation and agreement, and our presenter is Assistant General Counsel David Cohen. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Commissioners. On July 15th, 2021, Evergy Kansas Central and Evergy Kansas South filed an application with the Commission requesting approval of its energy efficiency rider in the amount of approximately $4.3 million. On October 1st, 2021, staff filed a report and recommendation. Staff found that Evergy's expenses to be reasonable and related to the scope and purpose of the EE Rider program. Staff also discovered that the amount which the EE Rider was amortized was also included in the transmission formula rate and has been since 2010, which resulted in a small amount being overcollected of about $1.2 million since a total of $1.2 million since 2010. Staff proposed that the EE Rider be reduced by this amount to account for the overcollection using the EE Rider's annual true-up mechanism. On October 8th, CURB filed a response to staff's R&R, which largely agreed with staff. On October 10th, Evergy responded to staff arguing it would be inappropriate to use the true-up mechanism to recover funds from beyond the prior period. On October 21st, staff responded. Staff views the language of the EE Rider tariff more broadly and argued that the prior period may be longer than the previous year. On November 10th, parties filed a joint motion to approve a unanimous stipulation and agreement. The agreement would approve Evergy's annual EE Rider filing and return $479,000 to ratepayers. This amount reflects the overcollection from 2014 to present. The parties have filed supplemental testimony in support of the settlement. Patrick Orr of CURB, Darren Ives of Evergy, and Justin Grady of staff evaluated the unanimous settlement agreement. When evaluating a unanimous settlement agreement, the Commission uses a 3-part test, which evaluates whether the settlement is supported by substantial competent evidence, will establish just and reasonable rates, and is in the public interest. This order finds that the settlement agreement meets the 3-part test because it avoids costly and time-consuming litigation, which would have an unsure outcome, and it preserves the EER, which is in the public interest. It also points out the difference between the settlement amount and the amount originally sought by staff is about 5 cents per customer per month. I'm available for questions.
Thank you very much, David, for the overview. Commissioners, any questions, comments, or concerns? I'll begin this time with Commissioner French.
I have no questions. I would simply say, I think that the order does a good job of laying out the rationale for accepting the settlement. And I think the parties, the record in this case is well laid out of the filings between the parties and all of the testimony in support of the settlement, explaining why this is a reasonable resolution of the case. So that would be my comment.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Duffy.
Yes. If I could read a statement, please. The commission is charged with creating rates that are both just and reasonable. During an audit, staff discovered that Evergy had been amortizing the EER expense through an account that was also included in its transmission formula rate and was in essence double counting a small amount every year since 2010 for a total of $1.2 million. This represents money that by any reasonable interpretation belongs to the ratepayers, and any settlement that does not result in a full refund cannot be called just or reasonable or really in the public interest. As staff indicated, Evergy had known about this issue for at least a year and made no effort to draw the commission's attention to it. And I find this very disappointing. So I would reject, or I will reject, any outcome that does not fully compensate Kansas ratepayers and is not in the public interest. And for this reason, I respectfully will be dissenting.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No.
No. Very well. Motion carries. The order is approved. Now we begin. Thank you very much, David. Now we begin the first of three transportation noticed items. The first one of which is doc number 22-TRAM-408-PEN. This is in the matter of the investigation of Lear Agri-Service LLC of Garden City, Kansas, regarding the violations of the Kansas Motor Carrier Safety Statutes, rules and regulations, and the Commission's authority to impose penalties, sanctions, and/or the revocation of motor carrier authority. For this morning, in this matter, we have a penalty order, and our presenter is Hassan Latif. Hassan, please.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. The penalty order before you arises out of a compliance review of Lear Agri-Service, a common and private motor carrier, which hauls general freight, building materials, farm supplies, and construction equipment operating out of Garden City, Kansas. This investigation was conducted from February 14th to 18th by special investigators Penny Fryback and Erica Pargas. During their investigation, the special investigators found several violations, and the order before you assesses penalties for 3 of those violations, resulting in $5,750 in total penalties. These violations included a $5,000 fine for failing to ensure each driver is operating with extreme caution during hazardous conditions. In this case, the driver was driving at highway speeds and near zero visibility due to a dust storm and struck another vehicle, resulting in a fatality. The penalty matrix does not specify a penalty for this type of scenario, but staff requests the Commission diverge from the penalty matrix as is authorized in our order approving the penalty matrix, and allow for a penalty to be issued for this action due to the severity of the violation. The penalty order also recommends a $650 fine for failure to test its driver for alcohol-controlled substances as soon as practicable following a DOT recordable accident, and a $100 fine for failure to inquire into a driver's motor vehicle record at least once every 12 months. Staff recommends approval of the order before you, which includes the advanced fine. Myself and staff are available to take any questions you have.
Right this way. Thank you, Hassan. Commissioners, do you have any questions, comments, or concerns about this order or this docket? I'll begin with Commissioner French.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Duffy.
I think the penalty is a good reflection of the severity. The penalty amount is a good reflection of the severity of the infraction. There were warnings posted the day before that December 15th was going to be a severe wind day. And it saddens me that the advice was not heeded. With that, Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the order.
I'll second that motion.
Been moved and seconded. We approve the order. Is there any further discussion? I would endorse the observations of my fellow Commissioner Duffy. And I would just add this as well. Again, I think I join in with my fellow commissioners in commending both the field staff and our operations staff within the central office here for their diligence in pursuing these safety violations and in making the recommendations that they have. Having said that, any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. The order is approved. Next matter up is docket number 22-TRAM-413-PEN. This is in the matter of the investigation of Daniel Rodriguez, DBA Nonstop Trucking of Ulysses, Kansas, regarding the violations of the Kansas Motor Carrier Safety Statutes, rules, and regulations, and the Commission's authority to impose penalties, sanctions, and/or revocation of motor carrier authority. Once again, before us, we have a penalty order, and the presenter is Hassan Latif. Hassan?
This second penalty order before you arises out of a compliance review of Daniel Rodriguez, DBA Nonstop Trucking, a common motor carrier who hauls grain, feed, and hay and road materials operating out of Ulysses, Kansas. This investigation was conducted from February 4th through 22nd by Special Investigators Penny Frybeck and Erica Pargas again. During this investigation, the Special Investigators found several violations, and before you is a penalty for 14 of those violations, resulting in $12,200 in total penalties. The violations included, and I'll try to go through this quickly because there's several, but most notably a $5,000 fine for failing to ensure each driver is operating with extreme caution during hazardous conditions again. This driver was driving at highway speeds and severe winds and struck another vehicle, resulting in 2 fatalities. The penalty matrix did not specify a penalty for this type of scenario, but staff requests the Commission diverge from the penalty matrix to penalize this action due to the severity of the violation in a manner similar to the last penalty or that we talked about. The additional violations included a $1,500 fine for hauling loads in excess of the maximum gross weight of 85,500 pounds allowed in Kansas. And our investigators found 12 of such violations. A $650 fine for failure to test its driver for alcohol and controlled substances as soon as practicable following the DOT recordable accident. A $650 fine for failing to ensure each driver has an equal chance of being selected for alcohol and controlled substance testing. And the other violations including failure to maintain UCR registration, failure to obtain commercial registrations on its CMVs, and allowing a driver to operate a vehicle that had no annual inspection, among other violations. Staff recommends approval of this order as well, and it includes the enhanced fine for the hazardous weather, driving during hazardous weather conditions. And myself and staff are again available to answer any questions you have.
Thank you for the overview, Hassan. Commissioners, any questions, comments, or concerns? I'll begin this time with Commissioner Duffy.
Yes, if you'll indulge me, I would like to read from the report because I think it's important. On December 15th, the driver failed to use due caution due to reduced visibility caused by blowing dirt. A weather advisory had been issued the day prior, advising drivers not to travel unless absolutely necessary. I-70 at Ruralton, where the driver had loaded his corn, was closed due to blowing dust and reduced visibility. When interviewing the driver, he stated that he had considered shutting down at Syracuse. He had run into several locations between Ruralton and Syracuse where the visibility was severely reduced due to blowing dirt, but had decided to keep on driving. He was loaded with corn, a very dense product. And I just think the safety of himself to ensure at the end of the day, he gets home. But not only himself, every other vehicle and driver that he passes and passengers, they're at risk as well. And if you've ever been caught into one of those, and I have once, it was the most terrifying experience. It's like a fog. You can't see. And pulling over is really as scary as well. But it is absolutely terrifying. And I can't imagine behind a great big truck what that was like. I would like to ask staff, when you are doing your seminars, do you raise this issue of weather-related problems that perhaps they really need to be tuned into? Do you raise this with operators and owners that they should really respect the weather? And I don't know, Mike or Gary, who should answer that, but I would like to understand what we share.
I will answer that. We do not address that issue in our training because our training is based on the regulations. That would be something that, as a operator, we always encourage them to operate safely. And, that would be just one that we would presume that they would do anyway, just as a safe operation, because they've got to protect their own liability, as you mentioned, their own lives and the lives of the others around them. Poor decisions are sometimes made, but we do not address that directly in the training.
As I think about the Cottonwood fire this last weekend and how dense the smoke must have been across the highway, as I think about the burning of the Flint Hills and how sometimes the wind changes and all of a sudden, since we've had on one day, we had 2 major accidents resulting in injury and fatalities. It might be something worth putting out there that these young drivers or even older ones may not understand the significance of what they're driving into. And that might just come up in a conversation or something. I would just put that out there, that kind of an infomercial from the KCC, because it will result in fines. And I think the owner operator might want to be really apprised of that.
I think it's a great point. I think we can definitely add this into our presentation. We have the owners there for the most part, or the safety people. They're the ones required to be at the classes. So they're the ones we need to be reaching out to and just making them aware of something that seems like just something that would be a good sense concern on their own part. But you shouldn't assume anything. So we will make that notation and start presenting on that issue to be aware of these conditions, especially when they're noted the day before. There's no excuse for that. The scenarios you mentioned with the fires, that can happen spontaneously. They can come right upon that, and they just have to use good judgment. But those, again, need to be addressed by these company officials. They're liable. Protect their assets, protect the driver, protect the motoring public. So we'll definitely make this an issue.
Considering that the half of the state is in a severe drought, and we continue to have these fires, and I think we'll have more. They are putting out warnings. You got the app on your phone, you're going to receive it. But I think mentioning that might be good. I also feel for the driver for the rest of his life. He will have to live with what he did, and he will turn over in his mind again and again, if only I had. And I don't wish that on anybody. It will affect his family, himself, and of course, the family with deceased individuals. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Duffy. Commissioner French.
I have no questions, but thank you, Gary, Mike, and Hassan for the additional information. And I will move approval of the order.
And I
Okay.
second the motion.
It's been moved to second that we approve the order in this matter. Is there any further discussion? I would join both of my fellow commissioners in all of the observations that they have made. Once again, as unfortunate as the circumstance really is, and all the consequences that have ensued from it, that Commissioner Duffy, as well as Gary Davenport and Mike Hamey have already alluded to in some depth. I again commend our staff for their follow-on for this and for the recommendations that they've made in forwarding this order to us. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I would call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. The order is approved. All right, we come to our last notice item, which is docket number 22-TRAM-422-PEN. This is in the matter of the investigation of Redline Industries LLC of White City, Kansas regarding the violations of the Kansas Motor Carrier Safety Statutes, rules, and regulations, and the Commission's authority to impose penalties, sanctions, and/or the revocation of motor carrier authority. Once again, we have before us a penalty order, and our presenter again is Hassan Latif. Hassan, please.
Thank you. The third penalty order before you arises out of a compliance review of Redline Industries LLC. It's a common carrier which hauls salt and operates out of White City, Kansas. This investigation was conducted on March 1st by special investigators Wade Patterson and Matt Adams. During their investigation, the special investigators found several violations, and the penalty order before you assesses penalties for 5 of those violations, resulting in $6,600 in total penalties. The violations included an enhanced $1,000 fine for allowing its driver to operate on a suspended CDL. This penalty is enhanced because the driver was placed out of service by the KHP at a roadside inspection on January 28th, but was again found operating 2 days later on January 30th at another roadside inspection. There's also a $2,000 fine for falsifying record of duty status and a $3,000 fine for operating an out-of-service vehicle prior to making repairs noted in a roadside inspection. The remaining violations included failure to require a driver to maintain a record of duty status and failure to inquire into a driving record for its driver every 12 months. Staff recommends approval of this order, and myself and staff are again available to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Hassan. Commissioners, any questions, comments, or concerns regarding this order? I'll begin with Commissioner French.
No questions. Thank you, Hassan.
Commissioner Duffy.
I have no questions, and I move approval of the order.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the order in this docket. Is there any further discussion? I would simply add, again, my kudos to the field staff, in this case, Special Investigators Patterson and Adams, for their diligence and in the performance of their duties. Having said that, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. The order is approved. Hassan, thank you very much. Our thanks as well to Gary and Mike. Commissioners, pardon me. At this time, I don't see that anything further is on our agenda unless you care to address some other matter. In the absence of that, I would entertain a motion that we adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We are adjourned. Be safe and take care, everyone.
Take care. Stay warm.